Hello, everyone. How are you guys doing today?
Very well.
Great. It's great to have you, Jim. Very excited to hear your presentation. I don't see the co-chairs yet. I know that Joe said he was running behind because we have a meeting right after this, so he was driving. So he's in the middle of driving, and I'm not sure if Bob is running late. So he'll be here at 1:45, he said. So if we want to just have someone acting as a chair for now so that we can start the meeting and get a review of the meeting minutes and an approval while we wait. Let's see. Kid, would you be willing to act as chair for the first couple minutes?
Sure.
Okay.
Happy to do that.
All right. So all you have to do is really okay the approval of the meeting minutes, and that's really it. So hi everyone. Welcome to this month's Timelines Archive and Curricula meeting. Jim Bravo is here. He is going to give his presentation on where and when in Boston. I'm very excited. I'm so appreciative that he was able to take some time today. And before we do that, Kid, if you want to take it away, if you guys got a chance to, let me know if you got a chance to review the meeting minutes. Did we? Yeah. Does everything look okay? Yeah. Any edits? All good? Yeah, right. Okay. So if you want to start a motion.
Sure. Can we have a motion to approve the meeting minutes from our previous meeting?
Yeah, everybody can just give a thumbs up.
All right. I see Colin. Do we need a second? We're just going to A's. Okay.
Carolyn seconded. Yeah.
Any abstentions? Any rejections? What's the term? Okay. All right. Looks like it's approved. Very good.
Amazing.
I think the next item on the list is, well, Jim's presentation.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, Jim. Good to see you again.
Hi, Kid. Nice to see you too. Should I proceed?
The floor is yours.
The floor is mine, or the screen, as it were. Thank you, Genesee. Thank you, the committee, for inviting me to show this. Some of you have seen it in earlier incarnations. I think, Kid, you've seen it in its most recent. Jordana, you saw it way back when. I've been working on it now for about, I shouldn't say this, but it's true, almost 30 years. And I'm ready to turn it over to everybody else to add to, correct, and make it better. I'm going to start with showing you what it is. I am not good with all this technology, so bear with me if it goes a little choppy. So I will share my screen. And everyone see that?
Yes.
Okay. Let me get rid of this. Get rid of this. When and Where in Boston is a combined database and website, and it's attempts to gather short illustrated descriptions of everything of significance that's ever happened, been built, made, said, or done in Boston. A very modest goal, but it's not meant to be a finished product. It's meant to be a work in progress and a framework that can be added to by the entire community, curated by local history experts to make sure of accuracy, and then made available to the public free for all. I have endeavored to make it easy to use because I find a lot of collections and databases and things that you sources that you go to online difficult to use. So I'd be glad to hear any reactions after you see it about how user-friendly it is and accessible it is. It has, and please stop me anytime, questions, comments. Basically, it has three main functions. First is a search function. It requires you to type in the exact terms you're looking for. In this case, we'll type in Boston Public Library. It has other filters that go down, as you see, the left side of the page. We'll leave them open for now, but they're meant to help you narrow your choices. Right now, we'll just leave it open and we will search. Oh, by the way, what I'm showing you is a prototype website built by Dennis McCarthy, who is a longtime Boston history guide and a retired software engineer. And it contains just 2,000 entries of the more than 60,000 that have already been gathered and are even now being put into the final version of the website. So we've typed in Boston Public Library. We want to search, again, just the sample for any mention of the Boston Public Library. And this is what we get. It goes pretty long for again, this is just a sample, but it has that many within the sample. It's any mention. So the first one on the list, we see John Adams up there, click on it. And this is what you get. These are what the entries look like. An image, if available, and a short paragraph, fact-based, fact-packed paragraph. In this case, a short biography of John Adams. And you can see the style in which it is written, pretty objective. The reason Boston Public Library is mentioned is that at the last sentence here, the Adams Library is donated to the Boston Public Library in 1894. And you'll see also that the entries are brought up to the present if necessary. It's not just all stuck back in the 18th century. All the entries will have sources of where the material came from. That's all ready to go, just not implemented yet. And they will have links to local sources of, Mass Historical Society, Adams Museum, things like that, for more information. Just 4 or 5, but a help to the user so that these are the recommended local websites to go to for more information rather than the infinite number that you find if you go online. So that's the way it works. Now, you saw that there's a long list for entries containing Boston Public Library. You can narrow it by year. You can narrow it by neighborhood. You can narrow it by category. Let's just do buildings. There are 3 kinds of entries: events, buildings, or created works. And there are 3 levels of significance: all, which means everything in the database; most significant; or significant, just somewhere in the middle. So if we narrow it by buildings and significance, that long list becomes a short list. We see the current Boston Public Library building, again with the same format. And we see the John Hancock Tower, because the Boston Public Library is mentioned. Hancock was voted after Trinity Church and the BPL as one of the best buildings in Boston. So that's it. That's how search works. The second function is browse, and browse works very similarly. Browse contains pre-sorted entries from the entire database into different collections. One of the collections would be a biographical dictionary. You hit apply, and whereas the search entries were in chronological order, you'll see that the biographical dictionary is in alphabetical order. And it goes and goes and goes. I think I have about 800 short biographies now. And you'll see, as we saw the John Adams when we were looking at Boston Public Library, that same entry appears here in the biographical dictionary. It's an encyclopedia. Again, in chronological order. It takes all those entries that lend encyclopedia-like entries, subjects from the larger database, and arranges them in alphabetical order. So you get the Arnold Arboretum, same thing, paragraph, picture of image if available, sources and links. Again, this is the list of the various browse directories. The next one we'll go to is, we'll see a group directory. Here you can choose by pre-sorted groups. And the groups right now are made up of this list: Adams family, African American, Asian American, First Families, Fitzgerald and Kennedys, etc. We'll click on African Americans. This is the list. And it goes and goes and goes. And here's another feature that is contained with all the other ones with search and biographical and encyclopedia. You can go up here and use the checkbox, check all, and then you have a choice, and we'll click on slideshow. Oh, did I do Asian Americans instead? I think I might have. Oh yeah, I did Asian Americans. Well, we can do that one. We'll go with that. Slideshow. And these are the entries having to do with Asian Americans in Boston. And as anyone who has ever put together a slideshow knows, this can be very, very time consuming. And now you have an instant slideshow. The next one we'll try is the street directory. And as you see in the slideshow, everything is in chronological order. Street directory works a little bit different. You have to start to type in the name of the particular street you're interested in. In this case, we'll try Huntington Ave. Hit apply. Goes and goes. And now we'll do the check all. But instead of slideshow, we hit map. Here we go. These are the entries that have to do with Huntington Ave from, well, I apologize. I've got some arthritis problem with my hands, and sometimes they don't cooperate. I'm going to switch over to the PowerPoint version of showing this, but trust me that this all does work on the database itself. Hang in. I want to get to the right spot here. How do I get this to come down? Anybody help me? How do I get this to go to the bottom of the page? There we go.
Well, you need to go to the bottom of the page?
I just wanted the screen share thing to go to the bottom of the page, but now I see.
Okay. I can stop your sharing and then you can reshare. Okay.
Okay. Stop share,
There we go.
reshare. Okay, so we clicked on Huntington Ave. Oh, one other thing I have to do, I have to go to slideshow. So again, I'm showing this in slideshow, the slideshow version, just because my fingers are not cooperating. Here's the slideshow. It goes from Miss Farmer's School of Cookery and Copley Square down toward the Prudential, where you see Mechanics Hall, Museum of Fine Arts when it was first designed and built, and toward the end of this stretch of Huntington Ave, the Augustus Martin School. And instead of chronological order or alphabetical order, this goes in order by address. So that was street directory. You can do neighborhood directory. In this case, we'll choose Roxbury. We click on these entries in Roxbury. Can bring it up on a map. We can click on any one of these and see what happened in this part of Roxbury. And this is this next feature is something I'm particularly proud of. If you wanted to give a tour in Roxbury, you wouldn't have time to do a tour of the whole neighborhood. So each neighborhood is divided into sections. You see on a list there, Dudley, Dorchester Bay, Fort Hill, Franklin Park, Lower Roxbury. I know that people are very sensitive about the sections of the city, and that is all up for grabs and debate. I've established these geographic lines using different maps and different sources, but I understand how fluid this can be. This is just one person's attempt at this, and again, it's all negotiable. But say you just wanted to see what was in the Washington Park area of Roxbury, it narrows your search down and it gives you all these places in Roxbury Park, in Washington Park. So it's great, and this will work on a phone. So you have a phone app and you're out in the neighborhoods and you want to see what went on in the neighborhood you're in, and this is how you do it. The next one we'll go to is the subject directory. The subject directory, you can either type in the subject, like we did with Huntington Ave, or you can go to the subject hierarchy or taxonomy. So you look through this. These are the subject list that the entire database is broken down into. Say you're interested in transportation, you just click the word transportation, and you get this list of events having to do with transportation, starting with the footbridge and the canal. So you click on Mother Brook and you see Mother Brook, the facts about Mother Brook. If you're driving to Dedham sometime, there's a little sign on the side of the road on Route 1. It'll tell you where Mother Brook goes underneath Route 1 and connects the Charles River to the blanking out on it, the Ponset River. But now say you're interested in transportation, but really what your main interest is mass transit. So you click on transportation and you get all the topics and subtopics. Jordana, I remember probably 10 years ago, you were asking me, oh, I'd like to see the list for everything. Well, here's the list. And each of the subjects has a breakdown. So say you click on mass transit. Now you have a subset of that large transportation list you saw, and it starts with the Cambridge Railroad. Again, just in this sample, Boston Subway opens, and you go from there. The last of these features, as you see, there are many more. I'll go to this day in Boston history. I have thousands of entries in the large database. These are the 3 from the sample that took place on April 3rd. So Everett was born in Boston. Andrew Peters was born in Jamaica Plain, and a large demonstration was held for appeal of the racial imbalance law at the State House. That's how Browse works. And the last function of the database is Explore, and that is just a map. You click on the map of Boston, click on one of these, the blue pins. This is where public occurrences, the first newspaper in the colonies, was established. Click over here at this pin to get the Zakin Bridge. The circles, some of you might be familiar with this, some not. The circles, there are so many events that they are, you can't show the individual ones, so you have to click on the circles to get them to disaggregate. So I'm just showing you the blue points now. So here's a blue point over on Columbia Point that shows Greetings from Columbia Point mural, which was installed in 2017. So we just went from, Mother Brook in 1630 to the Columbia Point mural in 2017. That's it. It's, I think, easy to use. I think it does a lot of things. I think it is, there's nothing special in it. Everybody in the world is using text, images, and maps and timelines and putting them together. What's different about this is that it's all the history of Boston in all its different areas and all different subject matters in one place. And I don't think there's anything like it. I'm going to stop share right now. I can go back to it anytime. But my goal is to give this to the city and make it available and have other people add to it. This is what I come up with in all the years I've been working on it. But the idea is to have other people add to it, correct it, expand it. Doesn't have to be a paragraph. It can be 2 paragraphs. It can be longer, each of the entries. I'm sure I haven't covered everything. It's a good start. I think somebody once said that about what do you call 12 lawyers at the bottom of the ocean. But I think this is a good start, and I've been trying, without success, as some of you may know, to get a nonprofit institution to take this on, form an editorial board, bring people together around it, and just start adding and adding and adding more to it. And I'll be glad to take questions and go back to the website to show you anything else you might want to see.
Thank you so much,
Questions,
Jim.
comments? Oh, sorry.
No, I just want to say thank you so much. It's a great tool. I see it being very helpful to students writing research papers, to the Landmarks Commission potentially. But I just wanted to say thank you and open it up for questions.
Jim, out of curiosity, what is Boston Oddities?
Oh, okay. You asked very well. They're just odd things that happen. Let me probably the best thing for me to do would be to keep this on the screen like this, and we could talk and you could ask. So Boston Oddities. Oh, I know what I did wrong. I'm not in the right place. They're just odd things that happen in Boston. Now, if we do, and it's not working for me right now. I don't know why.
When you try to share your screen,
Huh?
are you trying to share your screen?
Oh, well, I'm trying to share the screen, but it's not working for me. For some reason, when I go to oddities now, it's not working. Well, I guess I just have to answer the question. Odd things that happened when Sylvester Graham gave a talk on how meat was not good for people and everyone should become vegetarians. There was a riot at the Boston Theater. what else? When I'm blanking out on, there are so many. But they're just odd things that happen. Martin Lomasny pulled the famous envelope trick at a East Boston ward meeting by pretending to throw out a list of his candidates to somebody who had to rush across the harbor and get them registered at City Hall before the competition. And it turned out that they weren't in that envelope. They were in another envelope that somebody else on a bicycle was able to get across the harbor by using a smaller boat, things like that. Other questions or that I can show?
I have a quick question. Firstly, thank you so much for that presentation. It's my first time seeing that tool, so it's really exciting to know that this exists, as you said, as like a starting point. I was curious if you could just speak a little bit more on as someone who's contributed a lot to this, like what are some of like the major strengths, but also gaps in terms of content that's in there right now?
Classical music is a gap, I have to admit. I worked a little bit with the archivist at Boston Symphony Orchestra, and she gave me some guidance. Mostly I have world premieres and who all the different conductors were and when their tenure started and things like that, when Tanglewood opened. But I'm weak on that and don't know exactly where to go. But so some things in the arts. In sports, hockey is not there because I'm not a hockey guy. I don't know what else. It's pretty good for most for most subjects and subtopics, but it's not that good for some neighborhoods, and it's not that good for some areas where historians have not kept track of things. I mostly use books, hundreds and hundreds of books on Boston history and newspaper articles. But that is not necessarily going to be representative of what exactly happened. So people who've done more research with primary sources in different areas would be able to fill in these blanks. And that's the point, to bulk up those areas of history that the previous historians have ignored and that haven't been that available. And that's the point of bringing everybody else in on that. I've got a framework. Again, I think it's pretty good as far as finding things out and going to this neighborhood or going to this date or going to this area. But I want people to pack it with other things that I've missed. Anybody else? And I would love the city, in whatever form, to take it over and say, this is our people's history project that will bring people together around its history, allow us to share our history. John Adams said, facts are stubborn things, and everybody's entitled to their own. Somebody else said, not Donald Trump, that everybody is entitled to their own point of view, but not everybody's entitled to their own facts. If we can agree about the facts of Boston history, I think it goes a long way to building up dialogue and communication and a feeling of a shared history by all of us.
Jim, do you have like an estimate on how much you think it would cost to fund this website?
I have gotten estimates. It is really inexpensive. Just to build a website, it will cost about $25,000 to maintain it on the technical side, to make sure there aren't broken links and things like that, and keep it up, about $10,000 a year. Dennis McCarthy has done so much work on this. We've got it to the point where we are hoping to be able to launch the finished site either in the summer or the fall. And it will be a sturdy, robust site. So the technology costs are minimal. But then it needs an institution that's willing to gather people together and start adding and correcting and expanding. That's the whole point. So, and this is the other thing. I've heard some people have to be paid to do history. I'm not too familiar with that concept myself. But I think a lot of people will volunteer to work on this and to help get it to be bigger and better on a volunteer basis. And the problem will be to organize and supervise and administer volunteers, because I think a lot of people will want to contribute. Historians, people who write books would love to have their material in there. I've already taken as much as I can from the 1,000 books I've read on Boston history, and people who've written those books will, I hope, be glad to see those facts in there. And everything is attributed, by the way. There is attribution for all these things. So I don't, if you can harness, I think, the goodwill and the generosity and the volunteerism that's out there around Boston history, I don't think the staff time, the paid staff time, should be that much. What I've said is it's kind of like paying somebody to edit a quarterly magazine that never comes out and has no deadlines, because you're just working as things come in. You put them up, you add. You know, I think people will gravitate to that. The other thing is that I've had a lot of experience working with people in the neighborhoods through my work in city government. It's hard sometimes to get people to write things and submit them to you. It's easy to get them to correct things you've already started or written, because then they'll say, no, you've got that completely wrong. This is really what happened. And that's fine. So this is a start. This is, you know, what's wrong with what's here and what's missing. I think that will attract people and make them much more likely to come forward to contribute to this.
Beth?
I was wondering about sort of technology specifications, and there's sort of the maintenance, I guess, component of it, but there is also future thinking was something that I was wondering if that was something you'd already shared. And then my next question is around sort of contributors and fact checking or vetting, or sort of who has contributed, or if there was a process already in place for sort of validation before things went in, or if that was something that had been part of this earlier iteration.
On the technology side, I have been to a number of institutions and spent a lot of time with a number of institutions to try and get them to take this on, so that the technology used in it would be compatible with the technology they're using. But so far, everybody who said, wow, this is a great project, somebody should give this a home, but just not us. So what Dennis McCarthy and I have done going forward is, the technology right now, and I'm not a technology person, is all vanilla. It's all off the shelf standard procedures that can be followed by anybody. And I'll read the description: conventional 3-tier software architecture, single page application user interface, an API application, a relational database that works through a browser, MySQL, JSON. These are all buzzwords to me because I don't understand any of this. But it's not WordPress. It's not this. It's not that. It's standard operating procedures for people that know software. And we've talked to a number of website developers. Some have wanted to push us in their direction for the things they use, but which don't allow us to do the things we wanted to do. But they have all agreed that the way we're doing it, even though it's built just for this, is easily replicable. They all understand that they could all work in it. And then as far as the vetting process, right now, this is everything that's in there is something that I've come up with and I've cited my sources, and again, it's mostly books, it's all published material. Almost nothing from the internet except from official sites. If the New England Baptist Hospital says it opened in 1930, the second hospital opened, that I think they should be trusted, so I'll do that, but I'll also cite them. Going forward, the idea is to have contributions within this kind of format, a paragraph, have people say, contribute what the text should be, cite their sources, and then if possible, provide like a PDF or something like that to show where it came from. That would be the kind of editorial staff would take it in that way. And then the editorial board, which would be hopefully a very representative group of people with expertise in different areas, would look at it and give it a thumbs up or a thumbs down. So that is the plan for the vetting process. What else? I could show you the Excel spreadsheet that has 100 different columns and 60,000 different rows, and I could add, we could play, do you have this, and Boston history. I don't call it trivia, I call it Significa. Just to see if it has the kinds of things anybody hopes for. Hopes that are in there. When I do that, just very quickly, I do share screen, and it's just working. Share screen. Okay, here is the beast. It starts, when the Harbor Islands were settled, the Paleo-Indian period, and then just goes on and on and on. A lot of buildings when they were built. It was 1967. Anybody have a question about anything? And this gives you a sample of the kinds of things that are in there. So every year gets, say, 20 or 30 major events, along with the buildings and buildings that were built, books that were written, created works that happened during that year. And this is just, November 67.
Jim, I just wanted to say this is an incredible amount of work and what you've done. And my initial gut check was like, yeah, but how much native stuff do you have? And then seeing that you have the beginning of the archaic period is like pretty impressive. So I just wanted to say kudos.
Oh, thank you. And I'm looking for more people, especially for indigenous people, to add to what I have. That's a shortcoming of this so far, but it's there to be added to.
I'm personally, I wanted to. It's more of a can we start a conversation and Hennessy, I don't know if this is like the right time for this, because I know Jim is here and we want to ask him 1,000 questions, or should ask him 1,000 questions. But I feel like there's kind of a discussion that needs to happen here that would be good to have Jim part of. Can we transition to that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, and the other thing is, what I was thinking of doing for my next step is just to reach out to people like you, Joe, and to see if you want to participate in some of these, especially speaking about the editorial process and where to go to get people to submit and how to vet them. I just talked with Lynn Johnson yesterday. She's very interested in taking part, and we're putting together a list, and your name is already on it, about people just to do informally. How can we get this up and running? Once the website gets built, how to manage it and grow it. So if you're
I-
up for it, I'd be glad to.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's without saying. Yeah, for sure. I think that one of the questions I have for everybody is, first of all, does this satisfy what we're looking for from the timelines component thing? Is this enough? Isn't the right word. Is this what we're looking for? Because it's certainly enough. But is this the kind of thing that when we're talking about timelines for the Commemoration Commission, is this it? Is this kind of where is this saving us a lot of work? Is this what we really want to, before we even decide like how to actually make that happen? Is this it? Yeah.
Well, to me, this would be, I'd be glad to share what I have. That this would be a first step. What are you looking for? 1776. Here's what I've got for 1770. It's a starting point. It's not the be all and end all. It's just a paragraph on this, a paragraph on that.
And off from what you're showing us. Yeah.
Donna?
Jim and I tried to convince Northeastern that we needed to take over Jim's database a while back, and certainly, it's much more user friendly, and the user interface that you and Dennis have created is just really wonderful. I think, the challenge always is, I think a lot of the institutions that have worked with you in the past have been, or who the grunt person in the, like, I think this is really cool and we should work on it position. I think that, the folks in higher up positions at Northeastern are mostly worried about the the moving forward piece and adding to it rather than rather than what it is right now. And I think that was the biggest sort of hurdle from our perspective was this sort of like constant curation, which is, something that we couldn't necessarily commit to. However, that being said, I think certainly your database is, very close to be, it's very unique. It's very close to being the most comprehensive timeline of the history of Boston. Certainly, as you say, we can always add, especially, there's a lot of peoples in the city of Boston who didn't necessarily have books written about them. And so if those people, you largely, ethnic and sexual minorities. So, if there's a way that we could fill in those gaps, certainly would be very, very helpful. Especially in the light of, what we're trying to accomplish as a commission. So anyway, that's a long-winded explanation or comment. I also am interested to know, so about your future movement with you and Dennis, are you still, until somebody has decided to take on the project, you and Dennis are still planning to move forward with?
Right now, I've had it for waiting, as you know. I appreciate all you did to try to get Northeastern to do it. I think the higher education institutions are short-sighted there. The idea that I think one of them should have stepped forward to take it on and said, we will be the center for collecting and sharing Boston history. What a great role to carve out for yourself.
Yep.
So I think they should have, and I appreciate you trying to get it done.
Yeah.
But
I think
at this point, I think we're ready to just, if we can't find an institution, which would be much better to have an institution and have the gravitas and the seriousness of a home, whether it's the city itself or the library or someplace else, a nonprofit institution willing to make it free to all, we may just go ahead and put it up and go with the people that are interested in this and try to run it. Not ideal, but I'd like to get it out there. It's not doing me any good sitting in my computer or on a website that is password protected right now.
You know, I think the other challenge, I forgot to mention this part, the other challenge for Northeastern is that we as a library support faculty-led projects. And that's sort of the way that academic institutions work, is that faculty come up with great ideas and then we as a library support them rather than, anyway, so that's just like, you know, part that might be some of the reason why academic institutions are sort of, you know, challenged about that. You
Well,
know,
actually, I just want to mention Suffolk, the faculty were 100% behind it. Bob Allison helped lead the charge, but every department was represented at faculty meetings. You know, we had about 24 faculty heads. They all thought it would be great. That would be a great role for Suffolk. The law school, the business department, they could all focus on Boston's role in any of this. It was the burst, it was the, you know, what do you call them? Who's the money person in academia? Provost. The new provost, the old provost said it was great. He left. The new provost came in and said, I don't want to spend my next dollar on this.
yeah, that's,
So,
yeah, we report to the provost. You know, I mean, if you and Jim are going to be cobbling together, I mean, and making this work, you know, and it seems like, you know, what I see just from the outside about, you know, using Leaflet and, you know, using MySQL as the underpinnings of it. I mean, all of those.
my sequel is the underpinning.
Yeah, I mean, all of those decisions really do, as you describe them, are like computer science vanilla.
Yeah.
You know, pretty much everybody who's builds websites uses these kinds of things. So there's nothing, you know, fancy, or it won't take very much to maintain. I think it's just like, yeah, who can support it? And then maybe another thing to think about, as we as a commission, maybe, you know, we're just a commission for a certain amount of years in order to, you know, get the job done. You know, is there a way that the commission could convince other city resources to help finance this, even if we don't necessarily take it on as a project? So that's just, those are all my comments.
No, I mean, I would love to have the city take it on and give it to a department. And again, I don't think it's not, the technology is not expensive, and even to keep up, let alone build. And the staffing is, you know, a person or a couple of people to work with the community, and that's what the city is supposed to do. And it could be on an ongoing basis, whether the Archives, Landmarks Commission, Preservation Commission, I don't know, you know. Or the library, and I think the library could do it. And I've had long conversations with David Leonard about this. And, I think somebody should take it on. And yes, it takes some work to administer the staff and the volunteers and manage it, but I think it's worth it.
I think in the past, the city of Boston has had a city historian. That role is no longer a thing. And I think it kind of falls on folks like Kristen and myself and non-city folks like Bob Allison to kind of fill in a lot of those gaps. There's a bunch of places where there should be in the city, and there's no one place where it must be. And I know certainly within the budget, it's not a lot of money. But I can't say that we can take it. So like, that's the problem that I think we're going to have at this point. This seems like something that obviously should be community supported, and the fact that could be a government thing makes total sense to me. I wish I could adopt it myself on the archaeology program, and even though it's not archaeology based, but
oh, you're in there a lot. I gotta say, Joe,
yeah.
you're in there a lot.
Me myself. I guess I think there's no point in suggesting where else to go because it's obvious that you've thought about this more than any of us combined. So like that's kind of be not worth it. But I don't know what to say other than that I think the city should take this. And I think that um this doesn't seem to fit within the commemoration commission's role because of the end date,
Yeah.
Mr. O'Donnell. And I feel like that's the problem for me. But the other part is that within the commission that we're working on right now, and this is maybe a separate topic we can talk about, it's one of our responsibilities is to go from timeline to events or something like that. And this is such a massive thing that in and of itself is a great standalone product or resource. But also we would need to figure out how to turn that into something that we can turn over to our other subcommittee as a guide to say, you know, we're helping. I think as a committee, we can curate a list of dates that we think is worthy of going to the events thing just because we can't do all 6,000 within our scope. But I guess that's kind of one of my concerns is to, with this being as big as it is, how do we as a subcommittee kind of move this to another subcommittee? And that doesn't really answer the question about where it should go. And I'll stop talking because I'm kind of rambling at this point.
Well, I just, my reaction is, I'd be glad to help you in terms of the timelines, whatever I can do. As I said, to me, the timeline is the start of everything. Anybody that I've talked to that's ever written a book said I should have started with a timeline, but it's done anything. I mean, you all know, you start there and then you see what else, what that leads to. I'm working with the desegregation and busing committee on an exhibit at the BPL. So the first thing they want is a timeline. I can crank a timeline out in 5 minutes, and then they go, okay, well, now let's see what we have in our archives that we can use to put in the cases, or, what documents, what books, whatever. But it's a starting point. And then people that come up with other materials, you look through those and say, oh, I don't have that in the timeline. And it goes back and forth.
Carolyn, then Kristen.
I think Kristen was first.
Okay, Kristen, go ahead.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I just wanted to say I totally agree with what Joe has said that, we saw this a few years ago. I think it's amazing. I use Jim's book all the time when I need to find, information on dates. So of course, this is something we would love to take on, but being such a small department in the city, but I do think it's something that the city should take on, and I'm hoping that maybe the Commemoration Commission can be the push for that, because we've been working on the Boston 200 records and seeing all the projects that they did through that commission back then. They did everything from like public works projects, neighborhood histories, or whatever. And I think, getting the city's support behind this would be something great, like a great product for the Commemoration Commission to have, like, to go into the future.
Yeah, I mean, thanks, Jim, for your presentation. I haven't seen it in a long time either, and it's great to see. I want to go back to like Joe's question about, is this what we were envisioning? And I just sort of want to, I'm remembering from a month ago what the kinds of ways we were talking about a timeline, and how we even got to the point to invite you today, Jim, is we were talking pretty comprehensively and very broadly. I remember us saying things like, yeah, this has to be super inclusive of all neighborhoods, of all cultural groups. It needs to not just be focused on, a moment in time. It needs to, because we're looking at the revolution and the history of Boston and for 2030. And so I felt that even before seeing this, just today, we were already talking about a very big thing. So yeah, so I think that's important to say. So does this match with what I think we were talking about? I guess I'd have to say yes, and it has the built-in flexibility to be able to curate from it and all of that. I mean, the fact that you've done all this work, what would we do? Are we going to spend 6 years creating this? we wouldn't be able to do anything in the archives or curricula area that are also our subcommittee's charge.
Yeah.
This, if we could find a way to take this to push it forward as part of our work and say that this is going to be a product. And I totally agree, Kristen, to have this as a product to show would be great, but it also could be such an important tool for us and really kind of a godsend and a luxury to say this work is already framed out and would allow us to lean into the community work that we've talked about really wanting to do and that a lot of us have experience with and a commitment to, and we could keep going out and in and out and in to fill in the gaps, engage the community around this.
Yeah.
In the 70s, you couldn't do this because everything was static and an exhibit that you produced made out of bricks and mortar and fiberglass and wood and silk screen and all that kind of stuff. And the fact, I don't know. So I just think this would be really an incredible building block for us to be able to think about the other aspects of the other two strands of our work. And then I just had a question about what you were saying, Joe, about like giving a timeline to the events team. And that isn't clear to me as to like what they over there in the other subcommittee are sort of needing actually from us timeline wise. So I'd love to hear about that from Hennessy or you, Joe, or anybody else.
Yeah, I can touch on that a little bit. So I think what they wanted to see was what you guys had thought would be important to center certain events around. So I think they were looking for flagship events to start. So I shared a copy of the spreadsheet, and I think they wanted they saw like archival subjects, and they wanted something thorough for archival subjects because they figured there were communities that were left out and in the prior celebrations and the commemorations. They want to be thorough with those communities to make sure that they have specific events. So they definitely want, for example, in the let me open the timeline archive spreadsheet that we have.
Oh, and Kristen mentioned my book, but what I realized after the book is out is the book just sits there and doesn't add to it. This is 20 times what's in the book. And it's like you said, Carolyn, it's not stuck in pages. It's up on the internet and you can manipulate it and copy and paste. And that's where it's at these days. And add to, it's elastic.
Yeah. So I'm looking at the spreadsheet that we started, and when they saw it, they were like, we want things that are specific to certain communities. So is there something that we could find? I did like 1969, there was the Black Panther Rally at White Stadium. They have the Elma Lewis Playhouse celebrations for those 12 years. She does them in the summer. I have like the first naturalized Cape Verdean citizen in Boston from like the 1800s. So they want things that are like important to certain communities that make up Boston, that are important to Boston, and they want things that they could build events around. I would assume because, right, they have to create trails, they have to create events and exhibits. So I think they want things that are measurable in the sense that you can create a program around.
Well, I have firsts, oddities, but I also have firsts, all kinds of firsts like that. I have neighborhoods, sort by neighborhoods, what happened when. A lot of things are early on were just to in the Shaman Peninsula, so you're not going to get too much out in the neighborhoods then. But once the city gets rolling, then you get more and more and more, and you find out things that happened out in the hinterlands that nobody talks about now, but were important.
I think it'd be really helpful for, if not the entire two subcommittees, then at the very least the co-chairs to sit down and be like, tell us how we can help you. I know that that's kind of direct information that they said, but like format even, like what are they specifically looking? Are they literally looking for us to give them essentially the the raw material that they're going to turn into, like the actual locations for a walking tour, the actual um like 100% of the actual raw data that's going to go into these things, because that's kind of where it feels like we're heading. Like we are the research capital R team, it seems. And Jordan, I know I saw your hand go up while I was talking, so I don't want to like change the topic too much, but just to ask a question as a follow-up for Kristen and the other folks that are from the city. I can't see everybody. I'm sorry, I'm on the phone. Did this go to our IT department, our do it department, to even see the feasibility of the city just kind of like yoinking the entire thing? Or is this something that still needs to be brought to them conceptually even?
I think that the events, exhibits, and trail subcommittee was open to adding stuff as well, stuff that they knew. But I assume, this subcommittee would be capital R research, and they would be development if we want to categorize. But in terms of do it, they haven't been included in yet. Yeah, so that would be something we'd have to present to them.
And Kristen, that didn't involve. No, okay. So
No, we never approached Do It about it. No.
I'm really curious if maybe that's one thing that we can do, possibly with higher ups as well on the city
Yeah.
side, because I agree this really feels like something that the city should do.
I think if we team up, like
yeah, because there's a bunch of cabinets now involved just in this subcommittee for the city.
Yeah.
The I'm thinking about is I've been on a couple of NEH and IMLS review committees, and this sounds like a bunch of projects that are out there that are mostly hosted by universities, that are more like communal encyclopedias, which this feels like it's really kind of in that direction, or like a big wiki essentially. And I'm curious if we can look at some successful projects in that realm for advisory boards and curation editorial boards, which I think is the obvious thing that this kind of needs. Because I think if the city can host the website, that negates a bunch of the costs that we would have to fundraise around this, but it doesn't negate the organization component in the slightest. And I think it would be really interesting if we can talk to Do It about what that could look like, but more importantly, less about can we, but like we need to do this. And so how can we make this happen? And then see if we can get some traction there. Because this would truly be saving us tons of work as a committee, to be able to do that. And but I think we'd have to then add to it as well. And I think that's I mean, it's a timeline. Of course, you're going to have to add to it, but it does feel like such a great foundation doesn't really even capture it. It seems like a monument of work that we could add some to. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it could be a deliverable. You want to, show
Sure.
you've done something for one of these commemorative events. What better to do than establish a history of the city that people can add to? It's not a statue. Statues have their own problems. But it would, it's a 21st century version of a commemorative accomplishment or gift to the city. And the other, somebody mentioned wiki. It's like a Boston wiki, a wiki of Boston history, but it's curated, and it's in an ongoing one involving the city, as opposed to what we come to see through Wikipedia, which has many drawbacks. This would be different than that, but in terms of it being a wiki, yeah, that's what it is.
I saw Carolyn, Jordana, then Stephanie.
Yeah, thanks for raising that, Joe. I really like that idea of a framework, like the city takes it on, and then university and other nonprofit entities are part of an advisory board who take responsibility for the curatorial ongoing work of this, in a collective way. I mean, I think that could be brilliant. I think also there's such a great case to be made that having this could leverage a kind of collaboration, which we now, I think, all sort of want in the abstract, but don't really have a context for. I think when we started off in the work this fall and the commemoration and met people in small groups, and I know a lot of us are really excited about the opportunity to work with one another via this commemoration commission. Wouldn't that be pretty powerful legacy to for the commission to sort of have us sort of better convened to do this kind of work? And like to your point about universities, Jordana, you were talking about faculty members, libraries support the faculty members. And, there's going to be different faculty and community projects that are sub histories, micro histories of Boston. We can work with our students to engage this. To me, this would be great public history bunch of assignments to be able to say, oh, well, we don't have enough documentation on the Cape Verdean community in Dorchester, but we want to populate that. That'd be like such a great example of a kind of project that my colleagues and I could do with our students on the UMass Boston campus. And I'm sure we replicate that across all the many schools and neighborhoods. And anyway, so I really like that idea. And I'd also love to know maybe some models that you've seen in reviewing grants. And I haven't lately been looking around at other cities, but there could be some great models for even how that gets done in some cities that we could emulate. And I'll stop talking now. But thanks for that idea, because it gets me excited.
Well, if I can add, Jane Becker with her group, when they did an exhibit on Columbia Point, that should go on. When the exhibit comes down, it's gone. All that material, or most of that material, would fit into this with dates.
Exactly.
It'd be there. So all the faculty around could have a place to put their students' work. It makes sense. It's a two-way proposition.
Yeah. I mean, and just in fact, when we had that event, we had community members from Columbia Point adding to a timeline.
Yeah.
Using Post-it notes, and those dates could go into your timeline. So yeah, I mean, we have ways of doing that. They're really easy. They're really community engaged, and it could be really, really great. All right. So thanks. I'm going to stop.
Suzanne?
Hi, everybody. Thank you for letting me listen in, and just wanted to let you know that the subcommittee for events, exhibits, and trails, we're by the actual ordinance, we were concerned about doing things without your recommended timeline of key occasions, as it's quoted in the ordinance. So that's really why we're kind of hoping that you'll give us a sense of what your key occasions might be for us to get more in depth with the work that we're doing. And we want to work with you, obviously, hand in hand, because what we're doing is really has to be a collective.
Well,
thank you.
I just
You
want
guys are
to
doing great work.
I worked with Ed Gaskin when he was doing the banners on Blue Hill Ave, and he had some great stuff, but I was able to add to the things that he had, and he'd never heard of this person or that person. And I was able to, as a starting point, say this is where they lived and what they did, and different banners went up because of that. And again, it goes both ways. Someone does an exhibit, and it's the material is not in the current timeline, but it gets added to. It doesn't get lost.
I wanted to speak to Suzanne's point. I think that, first of all, hi, Suzanne. It would be great to, at maybe the next meeting, and to see if we can, I don't know if we're ready, I want to be ready, have a discussion on how we're going to do that for Suzanne's group, to make sure that we talk about, because it can't be 6,000 events. So like, how are we even going to make a recommendation of a timeline? Our timeline. I think that's a separate conversation, but I think we need to have that. And then the model that I'm thinking of, I'm sure there's others, but the one that I really was reviewed the product for was Encyclopedia Virginia. It's a little bit longer form, but it is University of Virginia, NEH, Library of Virginia, Virginia Humanities all coming together. Obviously, Jim's done the vast majority of the work. By the way, Jim, what you're doing is would take hundreds of thousands of dollars of federal grants to pull off in the way you've done it right now.
Where is, I don't see it.
Just saying, like, the kind of that
But
people.
I was gonna add, most of those encyclopedia projects, they get a lot of funding and then they pay people, they pay on commission for long articles. They use all their money to pay these people to write the articles. This might not be a popular opinion, but I don't think people read to the end of those articles. And a lot of times people don't want to know that much, but people are being paid to tell them more than they want to know. In this case, any cost would go toward coordinating people who know things and contribute to them so that their neighbors could get to know these things. So again, paying for coordination of residents rather than for professionals to write long articles, I think is a much better bang for your buck when you're trying to do public history.
Completely agree. I was definitely thinking almost exclusively editorial board structure inspiration. Like what do they put together for their kind of vetting and review board for entries and things like that? I know they kind of choose what they're going to put in and then find people to write it. So it's a different model. But I feel like the inclusivity or expanse of their editorial board could really be an interesting model for what we could set up if we were able to hang on to this. When we meet monthly, Hennessy, is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Could we set up something between now and the next meeting with Do It, and maybe we'll coordinate that with Kristen. Murray left the meeting, but I would really like for Murray to be there to help, maybe even the city clerk, and BPL would be great to have if they're interested in joining, just to really come together as like a multifaceted kind of and presenting it more to the IT department of like that we need to make this happen. How can we make this happen? And less of like can we make it happen? Because there isn't a Boston Historical Society. There isn't a Boston Commission on History. There isn't there isn't one thing that this very obviously, I completely agree with you, Jordan. We're missing that somehow. We're all doing it, but we're not together on one thing. But there's no other obvious place for this to be than within the government, because it just seems like that's the only way that this is kind of holistically captured.
And we've gone through the issues with trying to get a Boston Museum going, or the Bostonian Society becoming more state house centered. And there's a downside to that. You don't have one place to go, but there's an upside that we have so many places in Boston. And one of the things about how this is structured is that it does not compete with those people. And in fact, it complements them because it can drive traffic to them through all the links. So you're not saying, don't look here, look here. This is just the first one-stop shopping, the first place you go to send you to all those other places and institutions and schools and books. And I mean, it pollinates.
Yeah, this would have been good for the Boston History Museum. That never happened a couple of 10 plus years ago. All right, I don't want to keep belaboring that, but
my question was in the chat for Jim. Doesn't your spreadsheet already have all the various walking tours and the stops on the walking tours?
Yes, yes, it does. It does. I didn't want to broadcast that because I don't want this to be seen to compete with them.
No, no.
Yes, it has all those spots, and I can put them in order, and I've even added some of my own.
I think, one of the things that's so challenging about walking tours is that there are a lot of them and they keep being made, but there's no one coordinated place to put, and then there's overlap, of course, like the Chinatown and South End walking tours, there's going to be overlap. And so it would be fun to have like a map that included all of the various different places that were already curated by these various different organizations, like the Edgar Allan Poe walking tour and the Boston Public Garden walking tour. So just thinking about ways in which we could, use that work that you've already done to coordinate all of these folks.
Well, the women's history tours, there's a million of them.
There's a million of them. Yep.
And I've got them all. I've got all the spots. And if you go to the website and go to trails, which is currently not there because I wanted to find out if people on the trails wanted it to be there. you can get them on. You get the journalism tour, the crime tour, whatever it is. But I've put my paragraph in, but I would like the trail people to curate that, add to it. So, it's legitimate and it works for them.
Yeah, they all work so hard on choosing elements, then now there's the Chinese immigrant history trail, so they've all worked so hard on choosing locations and, and thinking about plaques. And, I can't imagine that any of them would have a problem with being included in a concatenated database of trails.
Right, and they've got all the competing little websites and nobody knows where to go. And if there was one place you could go first, then you could go to that. That would help.
I think-
10 minutes left.
I just want to bring up kind of a fundamental question that I think we're all wondering. Do we as a commemoration commission subcommittee, or the big picture thing, for what we're trying to do, are we aggregators or concatenators in that case, or are we production? Because I think that without the resources that we've all been wishing we had for the commemoration commission itself, it's going to be difficult to produce a lot of product like the 200th did, because at this point we're really kind of behind on that. And I see something like Jim's timeline or database really as being a real product that is being kind of offered up on a silver platter with a nice bow on top of it, that could actually become a product that gets lifted up by this community, by this commission. But I do worry that we're ultimately, within the timelines that we actually have, like the actual, like the time experience that we have, we're going to be kind of forced into the aggregator sort of realm. But then again, that's the nice thing about Boston, is that there isn't a lack of these things that already exist. So like we don't need to necessarily come up with new trails. We can, but we don't need to, because there's dozens and dozens and dozens of them. Or we can come up with new themes once we've identified all the trails that are out there. But I guess I'm rambling again. But
So I'd like to echo what you just said about aggregators and lifting up the work that neighborhoods and other institutions have already done as being like, especially in light of, limited budgets or zero budgets, as the case may be. And like you say, there's a million experts around the city. If we asked all of the various different historical societies to, pick out some things in their particular neighborhood that they're proud of, all of them would respond. I mean, my guess is like, as much as, so I think that, if we, in addition to Jim's work, if we really did reach out to the various different organizations that are already doing the work, then, and say, what have you got? I think that's a really good, effective, and also inexpensive way to go about these things. And I think, and from the last Boston Historical Museum, or whatever it was going to be called, I was just a baby archivist at that point, so I don't have any firsthand knowledge about it. But what I understand is that it was definitely like a top-down project rather than a let's all get together project. And I think that, with the lack of a Boston Historical Society, let's all get together and help work together on this is a much better strategy.
And I just want to say, I have been around to all the neighborhood historical societies who all think this is a good idea and would like to contribute to it. The smaller ones don't have their own websites, and this would be a good place for them. The larger ones, JP and Dorchester, they have lots of material, but they would be glad to just boil it down a little bit, throw in a paragraph every time there's something, and then have a link next to it to drive it to their larger presentation on their websites.
One more, is when we hear more from the other group, who are going to be doing we have Elma Lewis's papers. So we'd be happy, and we have actually quite a bit of it not the whole thing, but, examples of things that are digitized already. So, I'm sure that there are a lot of other institutions who are just like, who are interested in, who have access to these kinds of materials, would be happy to share them.
Yeah, I mean, we'll definitely have to have this conversation. We'll have to continue this conversation at our next meeting, and then hopefully, and that hasn't been scheduled yet, but hopefully we have that meeting, and then the next couple meetings we can have with events, exhibits, and trails as a joint meeting, and I think that's a good place to go. But yeah, Jim, I want to thank you so much for joining, for talking with us. We have a lot to think through and try to get started to see if we'll be able to bring your work to fruition. But I don't want to take up anybody's time. My only schedule is to 2:30 because we don't usually go so late. So if we want to adjourn, I will pass this off to you guys to adjourn.
I second or nominate or whatever the term is.
You motion to adjourn?
Oh, sure, thank you.
All right.
Yep.
I see there's Jordana and Carolyn are second. And amazing. All right, thank you guys so